You don't wake up. You realize you're already awake. Something's wrong. Your skin feels heavy, sticky. You try to move your hand. It drags along the ground, slowly, resisting. You smell it. Sweet. Too sweet. Not food. Not comfort. Rotting sugar, mixed with wet stone and something alive. You hear it before you see it. A slight scratch. Close. Too close. You stop breathing. Not by choice. Your body just freezes. And then you feel it. A slight weight, pressing on your shoulder, moving. Your stomach clenches. Because now you understand. This is not an accident. This is why you're all in on this. In some parts of Victorian London, people weren't always punished with chains or prison. Sometimes they were simply turned into bait. And now, you're not alone here. You're exactly where something is supposed to find you. This isn't a horror story. This is history. Sweet smell in the dark. You try not to move. Not because you're calm, but because something inside you understands. That moving would be a mistake. The floor beneath you is cold. Stone. Wet. Uneven. Your cheek is pressed against it. And it sticks. You pull away slightly. Slowly. There's resistance. A thin, stretching sensation. Like threads are tearing from your skin. You freeze. Because now you can feel it clearly. Your face. Your neck. Your arms. Everything is covered, thick, sticky, sweet. The smell is everywhere. It clings to your breath. You inhale carefully again, and that's when it changes. What had seemed sweet at first now turns sour, putrid, heavy, like something has been left in the heat for too long. Your stomach tightens. You swallow, but your throat feels dry. Wrong. You try to move your fingers. They drag slowly across the ground, leaving barely noticeable marks. You hear a sound before you see anything, a soft pulling, not yours. You stop completely. The sound stops too. Silence falls. Then it starts again. Closer. A soft scraping. Uneven. Alive. Your eyes slowly adjust to the darkness. There is no light source, just gradients of black. But your pupils dilate enough to catch movement. Something low, something small. You don't turn your head. Not yet. Because another awareness is forming. Slowly. Cold. Precise. It's not an accident. No one sheds anything like a human. Not so much, not so deliberately. You try to remember. A last clear moment. It's intermittent. A narrow street. Fog presses between buildings. Gaslight flickers in the distance. Voices behind you, not loud, but certain. You walked faster. You remember it. You didn't run. Just aware. Then, a hand, firm, from behind. Another one near your hand. No screaming. No warning. Just control. Something moved you, like an object. And now, you're here. You swallow again. The sweetness in the air feels heavier now. And then something shifts near your shoulder. A weight, lightly, but undeniable. Your whole body feels frozen. You're not breathing. Not because you've decided not to. Because you can't. The weight moves just barely. Then it stops. Then it moves again. Slightly. On purpose. You feel something touch your collar. Softly. But wrong. Your eyes close for a moment. Not to escape. But to postpone what you already know, because the truth is coming to confirm. And when your eyes open again, you don't look at her. You look ahead, into the darkness. As if, without seeing her, you might still have time. Your heartbeat grows louder. Each pulse rings in your ears, and beneath it, another sound. There are more of them now, countless, scratching, shifting, coming closer. You inhale sharply. Mistake. Because the smell hits you again. Stronger. Thicker. And now your mind completes the thought. Sweetness attracts. It always has. In the markets of London, sugar attracts flies, first of all. Molasses spills attract swarms. And here, in the darkness, there is something else that follows the same rule. You feel it now. Not just one. More. Your fingers dig into the stone. You try to ground yourself. You try to stay still. Because some instinct, older than thought, tells you something simple. If you move, they will notice. But even when you stand still, you are aware of something worse. They have already done it. Time becomes strange in the darkness. You don't know how long you've been lying there. Minutes or longer. Your body aches from the stillness. Your muscles tremble in the silence. You try to slow your breathing, to make yourself smaller, less present. But the environment around you doesn't allow for this illusion. The sounds multiply, layer upon layer, scratch after scratch. Tiny movements become a pattern, rhythm, and then a pause. Suddenly, everything stops. Silence is worse than noise, because it means something has changed. You feel it again. The same light pressure, this time on your hand. It lingers. Longer the test, you don't move, you don't react, you don't even blink. And then it's gone. A slight shift, a retreat, your lungs burn. You exhale slowly, carefully. But the relief is short-lived, because now the awareness deepens. They're not afraid of you. They're studying you. Learning. You're not a threat. You're something else. And that thought settles in you with a quiet terror. There are stories in London. Stories that people don't tell in broad daylight. Not because they're fake, but because they're too ordinary, too close to the truth. In certain areas where the streets narrow and the air thickens, the punishments don't always follow the law. Sometimes they follow convenience. The thief, the debtor, the person who asked the wrong question. They disappear. Not publicly, not ceremoniously, quietly. And what happens next is rarely recorded, because there are no witnesses, only the results. And in places where the very earth seems to breathe the damp air, where the cellars drop below street level, and there is little food for the creatures that live in the walls, there are methods. Simple, cheap. Methods that don't require chains or guards, only time and gravity. Your fingers twitch again. You can't help yourself. The feeling on your skin becomes unbearable. Stickiness, creeping awareness, premonition. Your mind starts to work fast. Not wildly, but in controlled, desperate patterns. Options, movement, escape. But every thought returns to the same conclusion. You don't know where you are, you don't know how many of them are, and you don't know how close they are willing to come. Another sound? Closer this time, right by your ear. You flinch. Just a little. Too much. Because instantly, the movement responds. Change. Fast. Direct. You feel something running down your sleeve. Your whole body reacts. But you force yourself to freeze. Again. 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 Your jaw clenches so hard it hurts. And in that moment, you understand something with absolute clarity? This isn't about survival like you thought. This isn't a fight. Not yet. This is a test, and you're already inside it. Somewhere above you, far away, you think you hear something. A muffled sound. A cart passes. Wheels on stone. Life goes on. Unaware. The world above doesn't know where you are, or what's going on below. And even if it did, it wouldn't come here, because such places are known, avoided, accepted. There are parts of the city where the law ends, not officially, but practically. And beneath those parts, there are spaces, dark, unobserved, patient, spaces that have learned to use what lives in them. The scratching is back. But now it's not cautious. It's sure, closer, more often. You feel it again. That slight pressure. This time, it doesn't go away right away. It stays. Warmer, heavier, and your body betrays you. A slight shiver. Uncontrolled. And that's enough. Because the moment it happens, everything changes. The silence is broken. The pattern shifts. And what was once a test becomes something else entirely. You inhale sharply. Your eyes widen. And for the first time, you almost turn your head. Almost. But you stop. Because deep down, you already know what you're going to see. And knowing without seeing is somehow worse. Tonight, you're not the man walking the streets of London. You're not the one walking under the gaslight. You're not the one choosing where to go. Tonight, you're a thing left behind. A thing carefully placed. A thing made to wait. And in the darkness, where sweetness is in the air, the expectation is not neutral. It is an invitation. And somewhere, very close, something accepted it. Where the city lives, you quickly learn something in the dark. Silence is not safety. It only delays what is already moving toward you. The pressure on your hand is gone, but the memory of it remains. Your skin feels aware, as if every inch of you is listening now. You dare not brush it aside, because you have already learned movement changes things, and not for your benefit. You try to focus on something else. Anything. Your breathing. Slow. Measured. Inhale. Exhale. But even that feels loud. Too loud. Like a signal. Like something is announcing your presence. Another sound. This time behind you. Then to your left. Then closer to your hand. They don't circle randomly. There's a certain pattern. You start to notice it. Small movements. Pauses. Then you get closer. They draw your map. You swallow. Your tongue can taste it now. Sweetness. Thickness. Artificiality. Not from food. From the shell. Intentional. Inflicted. Your stomach tightens again. Because your mind is connecting something else. It's not meant to nourish. It's meant to attract. And somewhere inside you, a memory emerges. Not yours. Not personal. Something you've heard before. A conversation. A warning. A story told in a low voice. About certain parts of London. Areas where no one lingers after dark. You remember a man, standing by the door of a tavern. His voice is low. His eyes scan the street before he speaks. "They don't always cut your throat," he said. Too messy. Too fast. He paused, as if deciding whether to continue. Then he leaned closer. Sometimes they just leave you where someone else can finish the job. At the time, it sounded like an exaggeration, the kind of thing people say to make the city seem darker than it is. But now, lying here, feeling the slow movement of something invisible, you see, it wasn't history. It was method. Victorian London is a city of systems. Everything has a purpose, even the things most people try not to see. Beneath the streets, there are networks. Not just sewers, not just tunnels, but living systems. Inhabited, adapted, persistent. Rats are not new to London. They are as much a part of the city as its buildings. They live where people don't look. They feed where people don't clean. They thrive where others avoid. And in places where food is scarce, they learn quickly. They adapt. They follow patterns. Smell becomes direction. Sweetness becomes a signal. And once something is identified as food, it rarely ceases to be. You feel it again, this time at your wrist. A quick contact. And then it's gone. Not hesitation. Testing. You close your eyes briefly. Not out of fear. In calculation. Because something else is forming now. Not panic. Not yet. Understanding. You're not being attacked. Not right away. That would be easy. This is slower, more controlled. You inhale carefully again, trying to separate the layers of aroma. There's that sweetness. Obvious. Heavy. But underneath it, there's something else. Wet wood, stone, and something metal, old. Like tools left too long in a damp environment. This isn't just a basement. It's used. Repeatedly. The air contains history. Layered. Settled. And that leads to a worse awareness. It's happened before. More than once. Not rarely, but enough times for the space to remember it. A faint sound from above. Distant. Footsteps. You freeze again. You listen. You wait. The footsteps pass. Without interruption. Without pause. Without hesitation. Whoever walks over this place can't hear you. Or he doesn't care. You press your fingers lightly into the ground again. You test. The stone is uneven. There are gaps. Cracks. Places where something small can disappear and come back. Your mind begins to build a map. Not of the room, but of the risk. Of every surface. Of every sound. Of every delay.
Another movement. Closer now, more confident. You feel him touch your sleeve again. This time, it lasts longer. Your body reacts. A sharp tension. But you stand still. Again. And then, it changes. The movement is no longer easy. No longer uncertain. It has weight now. A decision. You understand something important. They are no longer checking to see if you are alive. They are checking to see if you will respond. And every time you remain still, you are confirming something to them. You are not a threat. A slow, cold thought settles inside you. You are not assessed as a danger. You are assessed as an opportunity. The city above keeps moving. The crews are moving. People are talking. Doors are opening and closing. Life is flowing without realizing it. But here, down below, a different system is at work. Quieter, older, continuous. There are records, scattered, incomplete. Mentions of people disappearing, not taken to jail, not reported, just disappeared. And sometimes they find bodies, not intact, not recently, but enough to hint at something people prefer not to describe. The authorities rarely investigate these cases deeply, not because they can't, but because they understand the cost. To admit certain things is to admit a lack of control. And Victorian London depends on the illusion of order. So instead, some places are ignored, avoided, left to function as they are. And in these places, methods develop, effective, silent, untraceable. You feel it again. This time, on your shoulder. Clear, undeniable. It doesn't go away immediately. It presses, it shifts, it adjusts, it takes your breath away. Your whole body locks in. But this time, you feel something different. Not just movement. Weight, intention. Your mind splits into two paths. One wants to react, to throw it off, to fight, to break the silence. The other knows that the moment you react, everything changes. Because it's not one thing. It was never there. Another sound.
To your right, then behind, then at your foot. You're surrounded. Awareness doesn't come suddenly. It settles. Slowly. Hard. Like the damp air. You're not in the room. You're in the system. And the system has already accepted you. For a moment, there's a strange silence. Not silence, but alignment. As if everything around you has come to the same conclusion. You feel the weight shift again. Closer to your neck now. Warmer. More certain. And in that moment, you understand something no one ever says out loud. This method is not about speed. It's about inevitability. And somewhere up there, someone already knows. You inhale again, carefully, slowly, but the sweetness in the air is stronger now, thicker, almost suffocating, because time is no longer on your side. The method. No one records you stop thinking about escape. Not because you've given up, but because your mind now understands something else. Escape requires knowledge, and you don't have it. What you do have is time. A small amount of it. Measured not in minutes, but in hesitation. By how long they keep waiting. The pressure on your shoulder eases, then it returns, now closer to your neck. Your jaw clenches. You feel your teeth clench, hard enough that it hurts. But you don't move. You can't. Because now you're listening. Not just them, but the pattern. They're coming closer. Pause. Back away. Return. Each time, a little closer, a little longer. It's not chaos, it's a process. And that realization brings something unexpected, clarity, coldness, sharpness. You're not the first. You don't know how you know this. But everything around you hints at it. The smell, the surface, the way the air feels used. And then another memory comes to mind. Not a story this time, a detail, small, specific. Sugar was expensive, not for everyone, but for many. It came from far away, processed, bartered, measured. And yet, in certain parts of the city, there were places where it was wasted, it was spilled, it was thrown away, it was used senselessly. You remember hearing about it. The warehouse by the docks, the barrels cracked. They weren't stolen. They weren't robbed. They just left. At the time, people said it was rats, that they got in. They spoiled the goods. But now, lying here, covered in it, you understand something else. It wasn't a loss. It was a supply. You inhale slowly again. You try to separate the layers. The sweetness is thicker now, warmer, activated by the heat of your own body. It wasn't poured on by accident. It was applied, on purpose, evenly. It takes time and intention, which means someone was standing over you, close, carefully, providing cover, not to kill you, not right away, but to prepare you. The scratching gets louder, more confident, less cautious. You feel something touching your collar again, then a pause, then you press. Your skin reacts instantly, a wave of tension, but you hold on. Don't move, because now you're also watching. You start to notice something different. The sounds aren't identical. There are differences. The sizes, speeds, weights. More than one, more than a few. A colony. There were many of them in Victorian London, hidden in walls, under floors, inside structures that no one maintained. And in these colonies, patterns formed, feeding paths, safe zones, scent responses. You were introduced to the system, not by accident, and now it processes you. The thought is precise, clinical, almost detached. You are not a victim in the sense you imagined. You are the input signal. Another movement, closer, faster this time. You feel it running quickly down your sleeve. Then it stops. Then it turns. Your breath catches again, but you control it. It forces you slowly, because another awareness is forming, even more dangerous than the last. They become comfortable, and comfort leads to something else. Commitment. You swallow again, your throat goes dry, your lips part slightly, and that's when you feel it. At your jaw, a presence. Close. Too close. You don't turn. You don't react. But your whole body is now aware of one point. Right here. The moment stretches. And then, it's gone. Retreat. Not fear, not panic. The decision is postponed. You exhale slowly, barely. And in that space, Your mind moves again. Who does this? Not random criminals, not desperate individuals. It requires control, consistency, access. It requires a place like this. System. The dock workers know something. The warehouse. They react collectively. This changes everything. Because now, it's not about one decision. It's about many. And many don't hesitate the same way. Your fingers dig into the stone again. This time harder. You feel roughness, edges, something sharp, small, broken. You register it, but you don't reach for it. Not yet. Because another thought interrupts. If you move suddenly, you reset everything. The pattern is broken. And when patterns are broken, systems react. And you don't know how this one is going to react. Another sound. Higher. This time closer. A dull thud. Then silence. You freeze. Listening. For a moment. You think someone is there. Standing higher. But then, nothing. Only the city lives on. Without realizing it. Or not wanting to. You close your eyes again. Just for a second. And in that darkness, you see something clearer than before. It's not hidden because it's secret. It's hidden because it's accepted. A method. Unwritten. Unrecorded. But known. Used. And repeated. Your eyes open again. The darkness feels different now. Not empty. Not unknown. But structured. You are inside something that functions. And you reach a point where that function changes phase. Another movement. This time, on your neck. Straight. You inhale sharply. Your body reacts. A slight shudder. Too much. Because immediately, everything reacts. The sounds change. Faster. Closer. No more pauses. And in that moment, you understand. The line has been crossed. The testing phase is over. What comes next does not wait. And somewhere in the depths of your consciousness, a final thought forms. Not about escape, but about time. Because whatever happens next will not start slowly. It will start all at once. The cellar in Wapping. The first real horror is not pain. It's certainty, not loud, not panic, quieter. The one that sinks into your bones and says, this place was made for you. Something moves near your neck. It doesn't clean anymore. It rests. You test the weight. You feel the faint pressure of claws through the fabric. Then a faint movement. Your mouth opens a little, but no sound comes out. Just air. Cold at first. Then sweet again. Always sweet. The layer of skin on your skin has warmed with your body. It sticks tighter now. You can feel it near your ear, at the line of your jaw, in the hollow of your throat. Some of it is dry. Some of it is not. And where the moisture remains, the air feels crowded. As if darkness itself has gathered there. You don't turn your head. You don't raise your hands. You don't fight. Because beneath the fear, something more practical has taken over. You learn the rules. Late, but not too late. Maybe. The first rule is, a sudden movement breeds a storm. The second, silence, breeds courage. And the third, the worst of all, is that this room belongs more to them than to you. The pressure is lifted from your neck. For one breath. Just one. You think that perhaps the danger has passed. And then you hear it. Not next to you. Not near your hand. But above. A light scrape on the stone. Then another. Then a soft drop of dust on your sleeve. Your eyes lift. Slowly. The darkness above is almost complete. But there is a structure. A low arch. Wooden beams. And between two black lines of shadow. A narrow slit. A passage. A seam in the wall. Something has just pushed through it. Then something else. Your stomach turns. Because now the room is no longer abstract. It is no longer just dark. Now it has entrances. Now it has roots. Now it has a population. You lie still and listen. Now there's a difference between sounds. Down by the floor, the movements are cautious. Up by the beams, they are faster, more practiced. This is not a random wander. These are roads, hidden streets of another city. A city within this one. A city made of cracks in the walls, cracks in the floor, beams, barrels, sewers. A city that London never mapped, because London preferred not to think about what lived beneath its own appetite. Victorian London ate constantly: coal, meat, bread, fish, gin, sugar. It came by barge, by cart, by ship. It spilled into the markets. The rot spread through the alleys. The rubbish filled the yards. And it all fed something. Not just people. Not just profit. Other systems too. Quieter systems. Teeth in the dark. Movement in the wood. Eyes under bars. The docklands knew it best. Wapping. Shadwell. Limehouse. Places where the river brought wealth to the surface and left rot beneath. Warehouses above, cellars below. Barrels stacked in one room, wet straw in another, broken crates in a third. A cracked sack of grain. A cracked barrel of molasses. Old fruit. Fish waste. Buckets of scum. An entire underworld, built not only by villains, but also by trade. Overcrowding. Negligence. A city too big to properly clean itself. And where the city has been neglected, rumors have spread. Rumors always grow in damp places. Men in taverns talk about basements where no one should sleep. Women who carry packages home before dusk tell their daughters not to cut through certain yards. Lanterns whisper about warehouses where rats are so bold that they no longer run from the light of the lanterns. Stories are told of children who wake up from bites, of sailors too drunk to stand, who are found in the morning pale with shock and half crazy from what they experienced during the night. Some of these stories are exaggerated. Cities create myths when the facts are ugly. But some things live on in rumor because no clerk ever wanted to write them down. Movement near your cheek, closer than before. You feel the air change, then a light, tendril-like touch to the skin near your mouth. You almost gasp. Almost. But you stop it just in time. Your eyes snap shut. Your whole body trembles once, just once, then freezes again. The touch disappears. A retreat, but not far. You can feel it. The darkness is filled with anticipation. Your heart beats so hard you're sure the sound must be echoing through the floor. It seems impossible that anything around you could miss it. And yet the city continues above you. Somewhere on the street a wheel clatters. Somewhere in the distance a scream rings out. The door slams. Then silence again. The kind of silence that proves how lonely a person can be in a crowded place. You think of the last street you saw, the fog, the yellow gas lamp, the wet shine of the stones. You think of how narrow the alley was, how ordinary. That's the cruelty of London. Its worst doors are often built into ordinary walls. Its worst rooms are under shops that reopen in the morning as if nothing had happened under them during the night. The bakery above, the pantry below, the chain store above, the basement below, the calculation office above, the pit below. Respectability has always depended on what it can hide under the floor. Something lands softly near your shoulder. Not on you, next to you. Then something else flies after it. A quick collision, a soft squeak, then silence. There is competition here now. You are no longer a question. You become an object of interest. This understanding pours through you like cold water. And then, as if to punish the thought, a memory comes. Sharp, unexpected. You are no longer in the dark room. You are outside it. Not now. Earlier. You are walking east toward the river, not because you belong there, because you were sent. A note in your pocket, a name to ask for, maybe payment or a warning. Details slip away, but the neighborhood remains. You remember the smell of tar and the tide, masts behind the roofs. Thick river fog rolls between the warehouses like a breath. You remember seeing boys carrying sacks too heavy for their shoulders, women in shawls wrapped tightly against the damp, men with hook scars on their arms and river mud on their boots. And then, this place, a door below street level, not the main entrance, a side entrance, stone steps, a lamp burning dimly. Someone said, "Down there." You obeyed. Because down there it looked like a warehouse. Because down there it felt like work. Because London teaches people to distrust grand entrances and accept ugly ones. Ugly doors are often real doors. You reach the bottom of said stairs. The air changes. Cooler, sweeter, unpleasant, just thick. And in the room beyond, barrels. Broken. Some stacked on top of each other. Some split. One with dark syrup dripping into a shallow pan. Flies on the edge. A man stands with a ladle. You remember it now. Unclear, but enough. A ladle, metal, with a long handle, like a tool, like something that is often used. You almost flinch at the memory, because it confirms too much. It was planned. Not improvised, prepared, rehearsed. And then the memory chapter ends, as the dark room returns with a sound you can't ignore. A creak. Close. Then the feeling of, definitely, a weight on your collarbone. Heavier than before, firmer, no testing possession. Your throat tightens. You can feel its shape through the fabric and the nerves and the terror. It's real, but fear still tried to deny it. Warm feet. Tiny pressure points. A shift in balance. It moves once, stops, then lowers its head. Don't bite. Not yet. Smell. Confirm. No. Every part of you screams to let it go. But you hold on. You hold on because panic belongs to the room. Because the room was made for panic. Because the men who do it count on it. A twitch of a limb. A sudden scream. A strange movement that turns fear into madness. And madness into blood. No, not yet. You stand still. Though your gaze throbs, though your back aches, though the sweetness on your skin seems unbearable. You stand still because stillness is the last thing you own. In a coastal parish, not far from the river, a boy once slept under the split boards of a shed to escape the rain. No older than 12. A runner. One of those half-visible children who carried notes, swept corners, brought things, had disappeared. By morning he was found standing, not lying down, standing in the yard in his nightgown, both hands pressed to his sleeves, his face pale with shock. He couldn't properly explain what had happened, only that he had been awakened by movement, at first alone, then many, in the straw, on the blanket, on his hands, on his ears. The men in the yard laughed before they realized he wasn't playing. By noon, his temperature had risen. He wouldn't sit down in the darkness until evening. After that, the story changed shape every time it was told. Some said he had been untouched by anything at all. Some said he had been bitten badly. Some said the worst injury was not on his skin, but in his mind. Cities often hide their truth, by not denying it, by telling it too many ways. The thing on your collarbone moves again. You feel its nose on the fabric at your neck. You stop breathing. There is a pause so complete that it seems as if the whole room is waiting with you. Then, from somewhere near the wall, a sharp sound, a knock, a low sound, wood against wood, A person. The weight leaves you instantly. A rupture of movement across the floor. 3 directions at once. The room is empty of proximity. Not of presence, but of contact. You inhale so fast it hurts. Someone above you, or behind the door, or in the next room. A person. The sound comes again. Lightning? A box being moved? A hand against a tree? You can't tell. But the darkness around you has changed. The room that belonged to one system now touches another. And it could be worse. Because rats don't plan for further starvation. People do. You listen with all your nerves. Now a whisper. 2 voices. Quiet. Inaudible. Then footsteps overhead. Measured. Not hurrying. As if the men upstairs weren't afraid of what lay below. As if they knew exactly what the room was doing. It's as if they're waiting for it to end. And then comes the final terrible realization. Sweetness wasn't the whole method. It was just an invitation. The real method is patience. The real method is to leave the person in the dark long enough for the room to choose its side. You keep your eyes open. You keep listening. Because the next sound, the next human sound, could decide whether you remain the bait or become the evidence. Men above the floor. For a few seconds after the sound above you, nothing touches your skin. It feels unnatural, more than anything. The room is still full of them. You know it. You hear the faint retreat of claws in the cracks, the rapid whisper of movement behind the barrels, the nervous rustle of straw or splintered wooden planks somewhere near the wall. But the closeness is gone. And this absence feels like a borrowed grace. Not safety. Never. Just an interruption. You breathe shallowly. The sweetness on your face has begun to cool. Where it used to be wet, now it's sticky. Like nail polish drying. Like something that decided to stay. A strand of hair has stuck to your cheek. Your sleeve has hardened, where the coating has dried in patches. Your neck is even worse. Heat has gathered here. The smell rises fastest here. Now you understand it with brutal clarity. A body is not just a body in a place like this. It is heat, salt, breath, movement, source. And someone, very carefully, has turned you into a signal. The footsteps overhead turn. Slowly. Measured. Not stepping. Working. You hear the weight shift from one plank to another. A pause. Then the dull scrape of wood dragging across stone. A crate, perhaps. Or a barrel rolling slightly into place. There is no urgency in the sound. This is what scares you. A scared man rushes. An uncertain man hesitates. These men do neither. Whatever is happening above you has happened before. Then you hear voices. Low enough to blur. Close enough to prove they are there. One voice is rough, maybe older, or just worn by smoke and river wind. The other is softer, younger, not kind, just less corrupted. A word reaches you, not a complete sentence, just one word. Morning. Your fingers grip the stone. Morning. You don't know if they mean they'll be back in the morning, or that something needs to be done before then. Or that there won't be anything worth talking about until morning. The possibilities multiply too quickly. You push them away. You can't experience the whole future at once, just this minute, then the next. The second word slips through the floor. Doc. Then something like laughter. Soft. Enough to calm you down. You close your eyes. Doc. Sure. The Riverside District feeds everything. It feeds markets and gin shops, warehouses and chandleries, sailmakers and fishmongers, widows, thieves, clerks, cabmen, runners, odd jobs, and men who find it hard to ask questions. It feeds silence, too. Until London was taught how to lose things, cargo, box, man, anything can disappear if enough people profit from noticing. Tonight you are one of the things the doc has lost. The sound at your ankle. Quiet. Fast. And then quiet. You don't move. The interruption from above has bought you space, but not peace. You understand the room better now. The human sound momentarily repels them. Not out of fear exactly. Out of habit. Rats live in the cracks of human labor. They learn our rhythms. The lights. Footsteps. The doors. Voices. They retreat from their work and return to the remains of their food. And that means something important. When the men leave, really leave, the room will belong to its other occupants again. Your jaw aches from the tightness. You slowly let it go. The movement sends a faint stream of syrup through your cheek, and that alone is enough to remind you how vulnerable your face is. Face, ears, lips, places where the skin is soft. You stop your thought there. No more. Not yet. The voices above change positions. This time you hear a longer sentence. Should have left. Then the rest is swallowed up by the tree in the distance. Then, saw him. A pause. Then the older voice again. It doesn't matter. These words hit harder than any blow. Not because they're loud, because they're casual. You saw something, or someone thinks you saw something. And maybe that's why you're here. Not robbed at random, not caught by chance. Marked, moved, prepared. Because of sight, because of knowledge, because you've become uncomfortable. Memory awakens again. Not the basement this time. In front of the basement. Stairs to the river. A lantern swaying in the mist. A man argued with another by a stack of crates branded with some faded brand. One of them glanced over his shoulder twice before speaking. The other had his hands deep in his coat. You had no intention of slowing down. But you slowed down. Because you heard a name. A name you recognized. Not some influential name. Not a nobleman. Maybe just a clerk. Or someone connected with the accounts. A man who shouldn't have been meeting dock workers after dark. A man whose business belonged in the ledgers, not the alleys. You've been staring too long, it's clear now. And maybe one of them saw you do it. A clatter from above makes you flinch. Something heavy falls. Then a younger voice. Waste. The older one replies too quietly to be heard. Then the younger one again, more clearly. Not with molasses at that price. Molasses. There it is. Not just sweetness. Not just syrup in the vague sense. Molasses. Cheap when damaged, useful when diluted, spread around warehouses, incredibly sticky, and strong enough aroma to last a long time. The word pulls together the entire shape of the night. This was not improvised in a panic. This was taken from a warehouse. An instrument disguised as spoilage. The room below you seems to be getting even darker. Not because the light has changed. Because the meaning has changed. The method becomes more terrifying as soon as it is named. There was fear before. Now there is structure. Molasses from damaged barrels. A basement under the dock. A body, prepared, not beaten to death. Men upstairs, waiting for morning. It is almost effective. That is what is most terrifying. Not the sadism, the procedure. You feel the stone again under your palm. That small, sharp thing that was there before is still there. You test it with the tip of one finger. A shard of something broken. Maybe pottery or glass, blunted on one side. Not big enough to fight. Maybe sharp enough to cut the rope, if there is one. You have not yet dared to check whether your hands are tied. All you know is that your movements were so slight, your fear so focused, that you didn't fully appreciate yourself. That has to change, but not all at once. Not while they're still up there. You begin your description. Slowly. Your right wrist bends, Free. You're left. Also free. There's no rope. This surprises you more than it should. Then you understand why. They didn't need a rope. They had space. Your legs. One slightly bent at the knee, the other straighter. Heavy. Tense, but not tied. Same conclusion again. No one expected you to escape. Not because escape was impossible in the ordinary sense. Because panic itself would bind you better than a rope. And if you did escape? Where? Into a dark basement you don't know? Up the stairs, perhaps? The door is probably bolted. People are upstairs. The trap was built of choice, not chains. A more intelligent cruelty. Tonight you are the man who learns that captivity does not always ring like iron. Sometimes it smells sweet. Sometimes it lets your hands remain free, because freedom in the wrong room is just another form of confusion. The older voice is right above you. You can almost guess it. Maybe he is standing at a seam in the boards, maybe over the hatch. You hear the sound of metal hitting wood. A hook? A tool? Is the latch being checked? Then his words, clearer than before. If he is done by dawn, he is done. The younger one says something too muffled to be heard. Then the answer. No knife, no trace. That makes sense. Your heartbeat stutters. No knife, no trace. That's the point. The sentence is like a candle lit in a black chapel. Everything around takes shape. No knife because the cut can be read. The blow can be questioned. A body with obvious traces of human violence provokes questioning. But fear? Shock? Infection? Bites made in the dark in a basement already known for its parasites? That's another matter. You can take it as misfortune, or dirt, or poverty, or the riverside neighborhood doing what the riverside neighborhood does. The younger man mutters, "He'll scream." A pause. The older man replies, "No, if he learns." You're chilling. You're learning. You're not surviving. You're not running away. You're learning, as if the room itself is designed for learning, as if the method depends on whether one discovers the rules too late. Move and the madness begins. Stand still and fear does its work. Hours pass. The body weakens. The mind breaks. And by dawn, all that is left can be explained. Now you understand why men are calm. They do not watch for violence. They wait for certainty. The footsteps recede. You hear a door, or a trapdoor. Then the muffled sound of a bolt. Silence. Real silence this time. Human silence. The worst kind. Because now another city outside London can begin again. For a few seconds, nothing happens. Then from a crack in the wall above, a speck of dust falls. Then another. Then the first soft scrape of claws. The room wakes up around you. It resumes. It's as if the play has stopped for an intermission and is now continuing from the same line. You swallow. Be careful. You have new knowledge, but knowledge alone doesn't save. Still, it's something. You know they don't plan to kill you directly. You know they want dawn. You know they trust the room more than their own hands. That trust can be their weakness. Because a method repeated too often becomes predictable, and predictability can be broken. You feel the shard again. This time you wrap it around 2 fingers. Slowly. It's small, yes, but it's real. A narrow triangle with one sharp edge. Not enough. Maybe enough. A scrape by your boot. Then one behind your shoulder. Then to the left. They're back. Not interesting now. Hungry. Convenient. Break is over. Class resumes. And as the first new movement touches your sleeve cuff, the last thought solidifies in you. You're here because you saw something, or someone. But that may not be the only reason. Men who hide witnesses kill quickly when they're scared. Men who fake accidents do something else. They're protecting not just themselves, but their business. A route. A system big enough to demand discretion. Which means that the name you heard at the docks may have more meaning than you realize. And if you live long enough to remember it completely, this night won't end in the basement. It leads up. To the ledgers. To the warehouses. To respectable rooms that smell of ink, not molasses. Something touches your shoe. Then it rises, and the waiting section closes. The rule of sudden movement. It starts with your shoe, not with pain, with weight, first small, almost gentle, a quick test pressure on the skin, then a shift, then another. Something rises. You feel movement through the hardened tissue of your ankle. A barely perceptible transfer of weight. A pause. Then the distinct crunch of claws finding a grip. Your whole body wants to flinch. Every instinct in you is awakened at once. Strike. Turn. Strike. Run. But another instinct, a newer, colder one, learned in this room, holds you still. Because now you know that the room listens for panic, and that anything that lives by hunger also lives by reaction. The thing at your ankle remains. You can almost picture its shape just by feeling it. Balance. Caution. Confidence gradually returns. It moves again. Higher. Your calf muscles tense involuntarily. That's enough to change its pace. It freezes. So do you. The room holds on to this shared pause. Then slowly it continues. Your mouth now tastes of metal. Fear does that. Even in a room sweet with molasses, horror finds a way to make your tongue bitter. You keep your right hand close to the stone. Your left hand barely grasps the shattered fragment. You don't grip it tightly. The firm grip turns into a tremor. The tremor turns into movement. The movement turns into a storm. You have learned a lot, but you are also learning something else. Silence protects only up to a point. After that, silence becomes permission. Another sound near your shoulder. Another against the wall. A third somewhere over a crack in the beam. They have already turned completely. Not one, not two. Enough. Enough to make the room seem alive with layers. Ground level, wall level, ceiling seam, 3 roots, 3 angles, 1 body. Yours. You do not pray. Not because you do not believe. Because prayer belongs to words, and words here seem dangerous. Even breathing feels dangerous. So instead you count. Movements, pauses, turns, 1 at your ankle, 1 at your elbow, 1 across the boards behind your head. Counting is a kind of control. Or maybe just a form of control. But in a place like this, it might be enough to keep your mind from splitting. The thing at your foot reaches your knee. Pause. Then turn slightly as if reconsidering. You feel the faint push of his body against the fabric. Testing. Questioning. You remain a stone. Your lungs ache. Your neck is slippery where the syrup hasn't dried yet. A fly would find you in daylight. Down here, the city sends various inspectors. Victorian London feared rats on people and fed them in private. It is one of the great hypocrisies of the age. The same city that preached cleanliness allowed entire neighborhoods to sit on filtration, garbage, rotting straw, damp basements, and broken food supplies. The same officials who were concerned with appearance often ignored the decaying architecture beneath the stairs. Middle-class houses could keep traps, shops could hire boys to bring poison, warehouses kept cats when they could. But the city as a whole was too big, too damp, too crowded, too hungry, and too profitable to be properly cleaned. And where things couldn't be cleaned, they were managed, or tolerated, or use. The last possibility is one that no respectable ledger book will admit. Use, not just tolerate, not just trap and curse. Use as pressure, as a threat, as evidence of what happens in certain places after dark. You're starting to see it now. This basement is not just a dirty room under a dockyard. It's a device. A room that lets nature do what humans would rather not be caught doing themselves. A room that leaves fewer clean edges for the law to explore. A room where you can invite famine and then blame. Something touches the back of your hand. You almost lose the shard. Almost. You feel your fingers twitch. The touch disappears. Then it returns. This time it's easier. Fast. You shiver that they're studying your limits just as you're studying theirs. Where the body responds, where it doesn't. Where the tissue is thick. Where the skin is close. This isn't intelligence in the great human sense. This is worse. This is an appetite, sharpened by repetition. You're not just locked in the dark tonight. What you're reading. The thing on your knee is dropping again. This should be a relief. Instead, it's making you colder. Because now you know it can come back when it wants to. The first courage is always the hardest. The second comes faster. Your fingers lightly squeeze the shard again. You start to think differently. Not about escape yet. About interruption. If a move is going to cause a storm, then the move has to be precise. Small. Timed. Useful. There's a difference between panic and resolution. You don't know if the room will take that difference into account. But this might be your only chance. You listen. No human footsteps upstairs. No voices. No lightning. Just the soft revolution of claws. Good. Or bad. At least it's transparent. The syrup on your neck tugs again as you swallow. That's where danger feels closest. Not because there's something there now. Because something has been there before. And it will be again. The neck is warmth, breath, pulse. Even animals can sense where life is strongest. Maybe especially them. A sound to the right. Fast and direct. Then something runs along the bottom of your coat and disappears again. You hold on. Stand. Stand. But your heartbeat is too loud now. Your vision throbs at the edge. A dark room can become a tunnel if fear narrows it enough. You force yourself to widen. Feel the stone. Hear the wall crack. Smell the molasses. Get to know the room. A familiar horror is still a horror. But it gives the mind a foundation to lean on. In the poorer parts of London, the fear of rats was not theatrical. It was practical. Household manuals talked about traps and cleanliness, but the people who needed such advice often lived where neither time nor money allowed. Cellars flooded, boards warped, waste collected in corners behind barrels. Bread was stored low. Children slept on straw too close to the walls. In the cramped tenements and warehouse basements, the line between human shelter and vermin territory was so thin that it collapsed every night. Reports came in, fragmented, embarrassing, often downplayed, of sleeping workers waking up from bites on their fingers that left grease, of babies injured in crowded rooms, of sick and feverish people too weak to chase away the animals right away. No city likes to remember such things clearly, so they fade into side notes, medical notes, newspaper lines buried under shipping quotes, whispers on the stairs, a supervisor warning a young mother not to leave crumbs by the crib, a dock worker laughing too loudly, saying, "Keep your boots on, or they'll count your toes for grease." That's how real fear survives. Not in grandiose statements, in habits. You feel a new touch at your cuff, then another one over your shoulder. The room closes again. Your chance, if it exists, won't be open for long. You turn the shard in your fingers, barely noticeable. Its blade is real, sharp enough to cut skin, sharp enough perhaps to cut through fabric, or make a sound. The idea comes suddenly. Don't fight. Reorient. If the room responds to movement, perhaps it responds to noise, a dropped object, a scrape from a body, a disturbance by the wall. Will it attract them? Will it scare them away from you? You don't know. That's the horror. Each option has its opposite. The weight returns to your boot, this time without hesitation, up your ankle, through your shin. Your whole body stiffens. Then another separate movement near your elbow. 2 now, 1 lower, 1 higher. Your time for theory is up. You decide, not with courage, with necessity. Slowly, so slowly that you feel each part of the movement as if it were measured in separate hours. You move the fragment half an inch away from your palm. Nothing changes. Another half an inch. Still nothing. The movement near your shin stops. The one near your elbow doesn't change. Another part. You reach a shallow crack in the rock. Then, with the smallest movement you can make, you press down on the fragment and pull. A dry scratch. Thin, sharp, short. Every sound in the room dies away. Suddenly, silence envelops you. The thing at your shin freezes. The thing at your elbow disappears so quickly you barely feel it go. You wait. A whole second. 2. Then from the other side of the room, movement. Not towards you. Away. Waves of retreat to the seam of the wall. It worked, or partly worked. The room changed direction. Not all of it, but enough. Breath. Dangerous. Precious. Enters your lungs. You don't let yourself celebrate. These rooms punish confidence. The lesson is important, though. A sudden movement brings on a frenzy, but a controlled sound can dispel it. You hide it like a clerk saving a figure. Useful. Potentially deadly if used incorrectly. Useful all the same. But then comes the price. A fresh drop of molasses, fluffed by your barely perceptible movement, slides from your sleeve to the back of your wrist. The smell rises again. Warmer now. And almost immediately the nearest scratch returns. Faster. As if the room has righted itself. As if the disturbance has only heightened the invitation. Your momentary advantage is crumbling. For the first time you feel anger stronger than fear. Sharp. Vivid. Not because it's unfair. Because it's meant to be. Every path here leads back to you. You clench your fingers around the shard again. No, not every path. There's still a chance to consider time. Human footsteps have pushed them away. The sound has dissipated a little. The silence lingers. The panic accelerates. Rules. Even hell prefers rules. And rules can be learned. Broken. Used in reverse. A new sound reaches you. Not from the room, not from the walls. From you. A faint, involuntary tremor in your teeth. You press your tongue against them to calm it. You can't afford to get untangled. Not yet. Because another memory's coming, and with it perhaps an explanation. A name by the docks, a bookbroker, men under the fog. You almost guessed it. Almost. Something with the letter H. Or maybe B. You can't quite place it. Fear blurs the edges of the memory. But you know one thing. The honorable men are tied to this room. That means there are stairs leading not only to the street, but also to offices, to desks, to ledgers, to business. Which means survival is not just survival anymore. This is a witness. If you make it to dawn alive, you won't just escape from the basement. You'll climb into a structure bigger than the men above the floor. And maybe that's why they've entrusted the room with the job. No one expects the bait to speak after this. The scratching returns to your collar, then to your sleeve, then back to the edge of your boot. The wave builds. You can feel it. The room breathes. The colony decides. And deep within that horror, one firm thought forms. If the next storm comes, you'll have to move. Not wildly. Not as prey. As someone who finally understands the tool being used against them. Basement arithmetic. The room no longer just happens to you. You begin, slowly, imperfectly, precariously, to return to it. That doesn't mean control. Not yet. That means pattern. And pattern, once seen, cannot be unseen. The scratching at your boot sounds again. Stops. Returns from another angle. Then at your sleeve. Then a crack in the wall. You no longer think of them as separate beings. Not entirely. You think of them as a single behavior, distributed across many bodies. A kind of arithmetic. Approach, testing, retreat, return. And every rule in this arithmetic has a price. Peace buys seconds. The heat draws them closer. A human sound interrupts. Sudden movement multiplies the danger. Small scraping sounds can redirect, but only for a short time. You have learned a lot with your skin. This is the cruelest classroom in London. Your hand remains clenched around the wreckage, not tightly. You have learned that too. Too much tension runs through your hand, visible where the body touches the floor. The trapped animal trembles. A man who wants to survive must sometimes imitate stone. Tonight, you are not the man who carries a note through the river mist. Not the man who heard the wrong name. Not the man who went down the wrong stairs. Tonight, you are a man lying in the syrup, measuring the city through the sound of claws. The touch of your boot fades. But the room is not empty. It is getting ready. You can feel it. The silence between movements is no longer innocent. It has a form. It is a held breath. You begin a different kind of inventory. Not of your limbs now. Rooms. The stone beneath you is cold and worn. It means use. The air smells of damp wood, old syrup, traces of mold, and the faint metallic sound of tools. It means storage, work, repetition. The ceiling beams are low enough that the sound from above can clearly reach. That means this cellar is located directly under the workboards, not under a deep foundation. There is at least one crack or passage in the wall high enough to walk over. That means there are cavities, maybe shelves, maybe boxes stacked nearby, maybe a drain line. The room wasn't designed for what it's being used for now. That matters. A room designed for brutality is one thing. A room converted for that always has flaws. And flaws are where survival lurks. Another sound from above, not footsteps, a drip, then another, slowly, unevenly. Somewhere water is finding its way down through the boards or mortar. That tells you something else. The basement isn't airtight. Moisture is moving through it. Air too. Maybe a drain, a vent. Some kind of path, not built for escape, but still open. You don't know where. You don't know if a person will fit. But now the idea exists. And once the idea exists, the horror loses a little of its monopoly. Something touches your cuff again. You let it happen. Your whole body contracts inward, but you don't move. The thing stops. Then it moves on. You wait. Then, with the slightest deliberate movement, you move one finger. No storm? Another part? Nothing again? Okay. A very small movement can survive if it is timed between their approaches. That's the new rule. Or maybe an amendment to the old one. Either way, it matters. Victorian London operated on hidden calculations. Weights on ledgers, shipping insurance, spoilage rates, bribes included in wages. Lack of goods explained away by damp, theft, loss, rats. Rats. They appear everywhere in the accounting of negligence. As an excuse, as a nuisance, as an unavoidable tax on trade. A barrel cracked in transit? Rats probably got to it later. A sack that burst? Rats. A dirty cellar? Rats. A dangerous room to live in? Rats. A child with a fever after a night against the wall? Bad luck. Rats. When a city repeats the same explanation often enough, people stop looking at it.
That's how it hides, not just lies, of familiar truths used too conveniently. You think again of the older man above the floor. If he's done by dawn, he's done. No knife, no trace. That's the point. This sentence wasn't the invention of some desperate criminal. It sounded practiced. It was passed down by word of mouth. A principle. Which means the men above aren't just covering up the violence. They're borrowing the existing indifference of the city. Let the poor neighborhood explain the poor body. Let the parasites explain what people have done. Let the dirt take the blame. It's almost elegant, which is another word for the terrible when spoken in a basement. The room stirs again. A quick movement near your shoulder, then behind your head, then one near your hip. The wave returns in layers. You wait for the next movement to pass. Then slowly, carefully, you slide the shard an inch closer to your sleeve. Not to cut, to cover. The thought came quietly, but now it's intensifying. If molasses is an invitation, maybe something uncovered will be less interesting for a moment. Or maybe you can move some of it somewhere else. A corner of cloth, a scrap, a piece of stone. Not enough to resolve anything, enough to check the room again. You stop, listen. Nothing on your neck, nothing on your face. Okay. You use the shard to lift the edge of the cuff and drag a thin line of syrup from the back of your wrist to the rock next to you. The movement is so slow it seems impossible. Threads of syrup, then drops, a dark sticky stain on the floor. You walk away. Wait. Each second drags on. Then, movement toward the stain, not from all sides, but from one, fast, approaching uncertainly. A pause at the rock, another movement joining it. You don't turn your head, but you clearly hear the change. Interest is redirected. Just for a moment. Just a little. But enough. Your chest tightens with the dangerous thing. Hope. You suppress it immediately. Hope makes people careless.
Evidence is safer. And this is evidence. Smell can be shifted. Attention can be shifted. Not perfectly. Not for long. But you can fool a room with fractions. Fractions may be all you need. Tonight you are the man who learns that survival in Victorian London sometimes depends less on strength than on reading what the stronger systems believe you will never understand. The law assumes that the poor disappear. Commerce assumes corruption. Criminals assume that terror will keep the body still. The room assumes that famine spreads in a straight line. Perhaps one of these assumptions can be disproved. Memory sharpens. Name. Not G. Not B. Mr. Fenlow. Or Fenwick. No, Fenlow. Now you are almost certain. The clerk is perhaps more than just a clerk, assigned to invoices or to the water drawing in the river. The man who wore gloves too clean for dock work and boots too polished for the road where you saw him. Why was he there? Why did the workers lower their voices as he approached? Why did one of them hand him a folded piece of paper and then look into the mist before letting go? The answer is gradually forming. Because the dirtier the work, the cleaner the man who records it must look. Seriousness is never far from dirt. It simply keeps different hands for different tasks. A fresh sound against the wall? then a quick scraping of the syrupy stain you've created. Okay. The room reads the wrong line? What if there are more? You test that idea. Too many movements will ruin you. Too few changes nothing. You have to work like a scribe of death. Carefully, gradually, precisely. You wait for the next pause. Then pull a second thin thread of molasses from your sleeve to a point further away from your body. Another pause. Another answer. More hand movements. Not all of it. Enough. Enough to take one deep breath. The relief is real. And so is the danger. Because with relief comes ambition. And ambition in a basement is almost like panic in your best clothes. You force yourself to move more slowly. Don't plan the entire escape. Plan the next minute, the next sound, the next challenge. Above you, faint and distant, a cart rolls along the cobblestones. Then another, a change in traffic. The night is passing. You don't know the hour, but the city does. Changes on the docks, pubs closing, market carts before dawn, bakers rising, porters cursing in the yards. Every neighborhood has a clock made of labor. If you can read which sounds belong to which hour, you can know how much of the night is left. You listen more carefully. No more roar from the tavern. No more screams nearby. Fewer footsteps. Perhaps the deep hollow of late night. A few more hours until dawn. Too long, or perhaps long enough. Tonight you are a man without a lantern, without a witness, without a chain around your wrists. Just a shard in one hand and a lesson in the darkness. The grave before you is not a grave because it has been filled in with earth. It is a grave because the room has been taught what to do with still bodies. And now you are trying to relearn that. The shard catches on the stone for a moment. A soft click. The nearest movement stops. Then it resumes elsewhere. You freeze for a count of 10. Then you move on. Another line of molasses on your side. Another false trail. A third. Not much. Just enough to draw a new map on the floor. A map of the smell leading outside. Away from your neck. Away from your wrist. Away from the soft spots. You don't know if it will hold. You only know that the room is responding. A little less on the sleeve. A little more closer to the stone. This is not victory. This is negotiation. And London loves negotiation more than mercy. The wider mechanism becomes clearer when you lie there. The cellars beneath the warehouses. The spoiled molasses written off. The respected names in the ledgers. The dockers doing rough handling. The bodies placed where the city's existing vermin problem might erase the intentions. If this is true, you were not taken simply to silence you. You were taken in this way to protect the documents, protecting the roots. Protecting the people who can still sit at desks in broad daylight and sign their names without trembling. That means there are more of these rooms, or rooms that serve similar functions, the hidden economy of accidents, thought so cold it almost stabilizes you. Terrible things become survivable when they become legible, not lighter. Legible. Then something changes. A sound you haven't heard before. Not claws. Not a drop. Not the boards above. A faint draft of air. Cold. Brief. On your left cheek. Now you freeze in a different way. Not still like prey. Becoming listened to. There. Again. A breath of colder air from somewhere low and to the left. Drain. A crack behind the stacked wooden planks, the gap under the door in the next room. No matter how small it is, it means an opening. And openings mean paths. Not necessarily yours, but real ones. The basement is not a sealed box after all, it leaks. That may be enough to matter later. But now the room is adjusting to your false tracks. The movements are concentrating away from your throat.
It buys you something you haven't had since you woke up. Space to think. And in this newly acquired space, one hard conclusion comes into full force. You won't survive if you hold out until dawn. The men upstairs expect it. The room expects it. If you're still here when morning comes, you'll be what they want you to be. Silent. Broken. Understandable. No. You must change the arithmetic before dawn. Not the whole amount. Just one line is enough to make the result impossible to write neatly in the ledger. A final scraping comes from the distant stone where you have threaded the last thread of molasses. Then a brief silence. The room has bent a little. Not enough to save you. Enough to prove that it can be bent. And that, in the darkness, is the closest thing to strength you have felt all night. Cold draft under the wall. The air touches your cheek again. So weak you could mistake it for imagination. But imagination doesn't return at the same angle. It doesn't come cold. It doesn't carry the smell of external dampness instead of internal rot. That's right. Low. To the left. Not from above. Not through the boards. From the line of the wall. Or under it. You wait for him. There. Again. A light breath through the stone. The room leaks. And because the room leaks, it's no longer perfect. This thought changes everything, not the danger. Its shape. Until now, the basement was a trap with rules. Now it's a trap with a flaw. This flaw may be useless. It may be too narrow, too high, too blocked. It may only lead to another lesser darkness. But a flaw is a promise of sorts, not a promise of salvation. The promise that the system was built by human hands. And everything built by human hands is somehow poorly connected. You remain silent. Not because silence saves you. Because silence allows the room to continue talking. The scratching remains further from your neck than before. Your little false marks still retain some of their effect. Not ideal. Already some movement is returning to your sleeve. Testing, retesting, recalculating. But the balance has shifted enough for you to think. This is important. It is dangerous to think in a place designed to reduce one to feeling. Smell. Fear. Reflex. Pulse. The moment you start thinking again, you're regaining what the room was designed to get rid of. You check your feet. Not noticeable. A slight pressure through the soles of your feet. One foot presses lightly on the stone. Yes, there is a stiffness, a knee in the knee, a spasmodic heaviness in the thigh. But movement remains possible. Not easy. Maybe. If the moment comes, you can stand up, or try. Trying can kill you. Lying still can do the same. At least standing will be your solution. The shard in your left hand has become warm from your grip. It feels wrong.
Metal, ceramic, or glass shouldn't heat up like flesh. But it has, and that means time is passing. Too much time. The night is moving, whether you make it or not. Above you, the city is making its invisible changes. Drunken silence. The dead space before the first births. The hour when the carts start moving again. London always moves eventually. It never stays in one mood for long. That's why it survives, and why the men who do the dirty work beneath it count on the city's attention to move elsewhere by daylight. Something touches the back of your coat. Quickly. Light. Then another movement near the rock where you were dragging the syrup. Good. Dangerous. Good. Now you start to think in these terms. Not charity. Not comfort. Advantage. Another religion. You listen to the cold draft again. This time, instead of waiting for air, you watch the darkness. A stupid phrase, perhaps. But darkness also has movement, not color, density. The narrow seam near the left wall seems less still than the rest. the low darkness under the chimney. A box? A piece of wood? A broken barrel? Where the shadow is not static. Maybe that's where the air comes in. A drain hole? A damaged row of bricks? A rat's lair, widened by water and time? Never mind. This is direction. Direction is the hope invested in architecture. You begin to form a plan. I won't escape. Not yet. Approach. You'll have to roll or crawl to get to that seam. Terrible idea. Movement on the floor means noise, the rustle of fabric, the fresh smell, the storm. Unless the room is first dragged to another location. Not to scatter for a second, with a scraper, as before. To distract more fully. To draw another line. More invitation from the body. This idea is dangerous because it tempts with boldness. Boldness is nothing but fear with a gun in hand. But the logic is sound. If molasses is a signal, then the signal can be moved. Not all of it. Enough to distract. Maybe enough to buy one mad rush of traffic. 1. 2 won't do. Victorian warehouses were full of side drains. Not originally by design, by adaptation. A drain added after a flood, a vent cut after mold, a broken section badly boarded up and reopened by damp. Trash piled up near old service passages. Every practical repair creates another shortcoming. The men who do the bookkeeping upstairs call such shortfalls maintenance problems. The men below, if they are desperate enough, call them roots. You wonder how many others have noticed the same cold breath under the wall. How many were too weak at the time to use it? How many never got close enough to know it existed? For that is another cruelty of such systems. They often include the appearance of possibility, enough to torment the mind. A seam, a sound, a half-visible crack, a hope made architectural, a creak at the knee, then silence, then 2 quick movements, intersecting at the syrup stain. The room is crowded. This is helpful. Busy things make mistakes, or at least leave little windows between their hungry desires. You pull another tiny thread of molasses from the cuff. Not far this time. To the right, away from the draft on the left. Then another further. The reaction is instant. Then one move. Then another. You wait. Then you make a third line. Longer. The effort costs you money. Your wrist burns. Your shoulder pulls. Your breathing almost breaks the rhythm. But the room feels it. You hear a shift. More interest to the right. A little closer to your body, but less concentrated. A corridor forms. Not empty. Less dense. Maybe that's all you'll get. Men disappeared in the docklands for ordinary and extraordinary reasons. Ships sailed without warning. Casual laborers slept on the streets and often changed their names. One man owed wages and then disappeared. Another lost at cards and then disappeared. A boy who carried messages for 2 landlords at once disappeared between one alley and the next. But the records of the period, where they exist at all, show something colder than just street danger. There are repeated hints of spaces under commercial premises where supervision conveniently failed. Inspectors note vermin damage without visiting the lower rooms. Complaints from parishioners about filthy basements where people sleep in buildings officially listed only for storage. Insurance disputes where spoiled goods and missing supplies were written off as rot, damp, or rats, though the amounts never seemed to add up. And always the same pattern in the poor areas near the river. Things easily disappeared below the level of respectable trade. A box, a bag, the body. A city that carries enough goods can hide almost anything between itself. That is one of the oldest talents of a port. Not just bringing things in, making things disappear. The historical truth sits in your bones with fresh horror. You are not in an exceptional room, you are in a practical one. That is worse. If something is practical, it can be repeated. If it can be repeated, it becomes a habit. If it becomes a habit, good people get around it, pretending not to see. London was built as much by what it ignored as by what it glorified. The draft touches your cheek again. Stronger? No. Perhaps only because you are waiting for it now. And yet it is there. The low way. A flaw. Promise. You do the following calculation. To reach the seam on the left wall, you will first need to gradually shift your body weight. Don't roll all at once. Lift slightly in the shoulders. Release in the hips. Shift the coat, not the limbs. Use fabric for movement, not skin. This can reduce both sound and fresh impact. It can also be nonsense. You have no practice in surviving in such rooms. Only horror, reason, and one fragment. The scratches on the right side of the smear get louder as you approach. Good. Then something turns around near your shoe. Not good. Partial distraction. Always partial. Now you understand why the older man upstairs sounded calm. He trusted in percentages. No need for certainty if the room usually makes enough. Businessmen learn to live on acceptable losses. Maybe that's what you are. A loss corrected into a column. A witness written off as pest damage. The thought almost makes you laugh. Almost. But there's no room in your chest for laughter. Only breathing and calculation. Tonight you are a man who sees the city from beneath its excuses. Above you, names are written in steel pens in neat books. Below you, the same names may lie on damp wooden boards, broken syrup barrels, and the certainty that no judge would want to look too closely at one poor thing's death, if rats were to be blamed. This is not just cruelty. This is administration. That's why it feels so incredible. Cruelty can be personal. Administration can go on without remorse. You wait for the room's attention to shift to the right again. There. A slight jolt of movement. A brief scuffle. Another. Now. You raise your left shoulder the slightest degree and let your coat drag beneath you. A fraction of an inch. Stop. Nothing. The sound of your boot, but no storm. Again. Another fraction. A rock bites your sleeve. Your hip protests. Your neck tightens in pain where the syrup has dried on the fabric. But you moved. You, not the room. You moved and survived it. The realization is so shocking it almost destroys you. Take your time. You wait. The movements remain to the right, though one turns over your shoulder. You freeze long enough for it to pass. Then you move again. A little more. The cold draft now touches the other side of your cheek. You're closer. Or at an angle to it. Either way, the route is real. A sudden noise from above, a single step. No. Maybe a cart outside. The room shudders with you. The movements beside you dissipate for a moment. Okay. You use it. Another slow tug on your coat. Another inch. Your hand with the splinter slides forward, feeling for stone. Then wood. Then the broken edge of something stacked low against the wall. A crate. You're close enough now to smell old wood beneath the stench of molasses. And beneath that, the river dampness. Fresh by comparison. The draft is stronger here. So is the darkness. A narrow blackness under the stack of crates where the brick should meet the floor. Something has corroded, or gnawed away, or washed away. You can't quite make out the shape. But you know this. Air gets in there. Not much. Enough. Enough for something small. Maybe more. Hope rises again, uglier and sharper than before. You crush it. This crack may not lead outside, it may only open to a drain full of even worse dangers. It may be too tight for your head. It may be blocked further. No stories now, just evidence. Air, a hole, a direction. That's it. Then, as if the basement resents your advance, something turns at your back. Close. Then another one up your sleeve. The room straightens again. You've advanced far enough that your false paths have begun to wander. Your body is once again the warmest certainty. The next stage is approaching, and the next stage must be decisive. Either you test the hole, or you miss the chance to reach it. There will be no endless partial victories here. Only one greater adventure awaits inside many smaller ones. You feel the line of bricks with your fingers. Broken mortar. Wet sand. A depression perhaps 3 fingers high at the edge. Not enough. But above it is a cracked board, resting on the base of the box. Is it wobbly? If you pull it out, it might reveal more, or make too much noise, or knock the stack over, or throw the whole room at you. You lean on it with your hand. Don't pull. Not yet. Because another thing occurs to you. If there's a way under that chimney, the rats are using it too. Which means that running to it won't get you out of their world, only deeper into one of their ways. It might still be better than the open floor, but it changes the nature of the choice. You don't decide whether to leave the danger. You decide which form of danger offers more freedom of action. It's a very London choice. The scraping behind you gets louder. Then your sleeve. Then your shoe again. The arithmetic collapses. The room regains its balance. You grip the shard tighter. Not panicking now. Ready. The next step must be bigger than the last. Big enough to matter. Risky enough to start a storm. And if a storm does start, you should be moving towards the fault before it reaches you. The moment you break the pattern, you feel it. Before it happens. Change. The room tightens its embrace. Discrete movements return to you. False traces lose their appeal. Arithmetic corrects itself. That's the point. It won't happen again. Not tonight. You press your palm against the broken board. Not to pull, to understand it. The wood is damp, slightly softened at the edges, not fixed in place, resting, held by weight, not nails. That's important. A nailed board would scream if moved, one that rests could only sigh. Behind you, the scratching gets sharper, closer, less patient. You feel something touch your coat again. This time it doesn't pull back completely. It lingers. This is new. This is wrong. Your chest tightens. Your mind clears. Completely. Because now there is no room for slow thinking. Only decision. If you wait, the room closes. If you move, a storm begins. You choose the storm. You shift your weight in one sudden, controlled movement. No flinching. A movement with direction. Your shoulder rises. Your hip follows it. Your cloak drags across the stone. The sound is louder than anything you've ever done before. A dry scrape. A pull. A rupture in the pattern. The room reacts instantly. Everything moves. All at once. The scraping explodes into motion. From the wall. From the floor. From behind. From above. Not checking. Not stopping. Growing. You don't look back. You don't think. You push the board. Hard. It shifts. A dull crack. Then another. The edge lifts. Cold air hits your face. Harder now. Real. Behind you, a storm is building. You feel it in the vibration of the floor, in the sudden rush of bodies, in the speed of sound. You push again. The board gives way. It slides, it falls in. A narrow crack opens under the box. Dark. Tight. But open. You don't measure. You don't hesitate. You walk. Your hand moves forward into the hole. Your shoulder follows. Your cheek scrapes the rough brick. Pain flares. You ignore it. Behind you, the room cracks.
Something hits your shoe. Something hits your sleeve. Claws latch on. Slippery. Turning. The madness has begun. That's what the older man meant. This is the phase they never see, because no one moves like that. You reach forward. Your ribs touch the edge. The gap is smaller than you expected. Too small. Too narrow. You push harder. Your cloak tears a little. You feel the fabric give way. Your skin drags against the brick. Wet. Sticky. Pain. Something squeezes your ankle. Sharp. Fast. You kick. Not madly. Straight. Once. Contact breaks. Then it turns. More. You pull again. Your shoulder digs deeper. Your head turns to the side. You push through. Space tightens around your skull. For a moment, you're stuck. Your breathing stops. Not by choice, because there's no room. Behind you, the storm is coming in full force. You feel it now. Plural. Without testing. Without waiting. You force yourself forward. Your hand digs into the ground. Not stone. The ground free, cold. The gap widens a little. Enough. Enough to pull. You pull your body forward with everything you have left. Your ribs are loose. Your hips catch. Then slide through it. And suddenly, you're no longer in the room. You fall forward into a narrow underground passage, low, wet, barely big enough for your body, but empty. Behind you, the opening trembles with movement. Darkness has surged into the gap. Claws scrape along the edges. Bodies press forward. But the space is too tight. Too tight. For now. You lie there, your face pressed against the damp earth. Your breath comes in short, sharp bursts. Your chest burns. Your limbs are shaking. You don't move. Not because you have to, because you can't. Time drags on. Your heartbeat is pounding in your ears. Your throat hurts. Your skin prickles where the brick tore it. And then, slowly, you realize something. You're not safe. You've just changed rooms. The basement smells different. Less sweet. More earth. More rot. More river. You hear water. Faintly. Somewhere ahead. And behind you. The storm doesn't stop. The scratching continues at the opening. Insistent. Relentless. They don't give up easily. You turn your head slightly. Just enough to see. The gap you've come through comes alive with movement. The guys are pressing, trying, learning. Your time here is limited too. You're moving forward, slowly, painfully. Your body protests, but movement now is survival. The space narrows, then widens a little, enough to crawl. You move, one hand, then the other. You pull your body forward, away from the basement, away from the room, away from the method, but not away from the city. Because even here, in this narrow passage under London, you feel it. The system continues. Above you, men walk, counting, writing, deciding. Below them, there are spaces like this, hidden, connected, useful. And now, you are inside this network, not as bait, like something else, like a problem. And problems, in places like this, never go unsolved. You pause for a moment, not by choice, because your body demands it. In that pause, a memory freezes in place, clear, sharp, unmistakable. Fenlo, that name, and with it comes an understanding of why you were brought here. Not just because you saw something, because you recognized it. And recognition, in a system built on shadows, is more dangerous than evidence. You close your eyes, just for a second. Then you open them again, because whatever lies ahead, it is no escape. This is the next part of the same machine. And now, you are moving through it. Under the warehouses, the underground doesn't feel like an escape. It feels like a decision that can't be undone. You crawl forward on your elbows and forearms, your breath catching in the damp tightness, your coat heavy with treacle and dirt and torn fabric. Behind you, the hole is still scraping. Not constantly anymore, in bits and pieces. A rumbling noise. Then silence. Then another wild test of the broken edge. They study the gap. The thought cuts through you like cold iron. Everything under London is learning. Rats, men, rooms. And if rooms learn, so do the people who use them. That means that the moment someone checks this basement and finds that the board is out of place, the board is shifted. The gap is open. Your escape will cease to be theoretical. It will become a fact. And facts are what people like Fenlo fear most. The air is colder here, not clean, never clean, but colder. There is a living dampness in it, a smell from somewhere deeper ahead. Dirt, rot, old wood, a mineral smell where water has been running over the brick for too long. And even below that, the river. Faint, but unmistakable. The river is somehow in this passage, not directly, not as open water, as an influence, as a seepage, like breath moving through underground veins. You are now under the warehouses, or between them, perhaps under some forgotten communication well or drainage cut, widened by years of neglect. The space is not shaped for man, but it is not entirely shaped by nature either. That means there were hands here once. Workers, builders, repair crews. Someone laid the first brick, the first wooden supports, the first narrow path. Then time changed it. Water changed it. Animals changed it. And now you move through what is left. Your left shoulder throbs where it caught the hole. Your neck burns where the dried molasses pulls at the torn skin. Your boot drags harder than before. You don't dare stop to examine it. The fact that you can still use your leg is enough. You crawl on. The roof drops. You press your head down. Dirt presses against one sleeve, bricks against the other. For a terrifying second, you feel the walls closing in. You don't really move. Only a body that's too stretched with fear feels that way. You stop. You take a breath once, twice. You push your panic back into the corner. Claustrophobia is another room. Don't go in there. You have enough rooms already. A faint sound ahead. Not a scraping. Not water. A dull wooden knock, then silence. You freeze. You listen. Nothing. Maybe the barrel is settling above. Maybe the plank is taking the weight of a step overhead. Maybe something else in the corridor has shifted. The city above reaches even here in softened forms. The footsteps become dull thuds, the wheels become tremors, the voices become blurred weather. A person can disappear under London and still be under its influence. This is the worst. The city never leaves you alone. You move on, one hand, then the other. Your fingers sink into the damp sand. There are small fragments in the soil, maybe fragments of coal, debris of old pottery that has been washed up here for years. Everything ends up down there eventually. It's also part of how cities work. The respectable floors above get cleaner because the lower spaces absorb what falls from them. Water, waste, corruption, secrets. You think of Fenlo again. Clean gloves, carefully selected boots, folded paper exchanged in the mist. He had no right to this road, unless it belonged to him in some indirect way. Not ownership in the legal sense, perhaps, but in the operational sense. Access, control, permission. A respectable man near the docks rarely goes there because of the smell. He's there because the numbers go through the mud before they reach the ledgers. You saw him in the wrong place. Worse still, you knew enough to know he was wrong. Recognition made you dangerous.
A witness can be dismissed. A mistaken passerby can be dismissed with laughter. But a man who knows the clerk's name and sees him where he should never be seen, that man must disappear. Quietly. Neatly. No knife marks. No obvious murder. That was the elegance of the basement. Kill the body as agreed, and let the district attorney explain the rest. Your hand slips. You catch a brick. Pain flares in your wrist. Sharp. Bright. You almost scream. Almost. But the passage catches the sound before it can fully form. You stand still until the pain fades into something more even. Then you continue. The ground is now sloping down a little. It worries you. Down often means water. Water means flooding. Sludge. Traps. A man, weakened and covered in molasses, crawling down in the dark, is not a master of many things. And yet, the air ahead is stronger, colder. The draft that first touched your cheek in the basement now becomes a direction you can feel on your face with every pause. You follow it because there is nothing else to follow. Tonight, you are the man under the floor of the empire. Above you are boxes, bills, tea chests, sugar barrels, clerks in neat cuffs, foremen with keys, watchmen with lanterns, workmen with hunched backs. Below you are routes that no accountant writes in his books. And yet these underpasses can still do the work for the books. It's a revelation that's cutting through you like a blade. The hidden parts of the city are not separate from its respectable machinery. They support it. They protect it. They absorb what it can't do openly. Victorian docklands were dangerous, not just because of thieves, alcohol, or the river itself. They were dangerous because infrastructure and indifference intersected. Warehouses often stood above damp basements that were misused. Temporary sleeping quarters became permanent for workers too poor to rent decent beds. Warehouses were converted into informal housing.
Flooded subterranean floors remained in use because the goods above mattered more than the lives below. Reports from the period recounted collapsed floors, filthy sewers, vermin-infested sleeping quarters, and workers found sick or half asleep after nights spent under goods that did not belong to them. And whenever officials inspected such places, the language often softened the brutality. Unfit, poorly ventilated, exposed to nuisances, prone to vermin, as if rats were the weather, as if infestation were not an architecture built together by profit and neglect. This language matters, because once suffering is described as a condition rather than a solution, no one is really responsible. And that is how systems survive. You stop after the fact memory passes through you, not because it comforts, because it clarifies. You have never been involved in exceptional evil. You have been involved in routine. Routine evil is more terrible than madness. Madness can be isolated. Routine can be accounted for. The passage widens a little, enough to turn one shoulder more freely. You check the space with your hand. Brick on the left. Earth and wood on the right. Then, emptiness. A sudden open edge next to your fingers. You stop. You carefully explore again. There is a canal here. Small, but deeper than the canal itself. Perhaps a sewer, carrying water along the side. You can hear it now. A barely perceptible trickle. Not much. Enough to remind you how quickly such a passage could flood if a river or rain decided to take it. You step away from the edge and continue moving. Somewhere above, a heavy object moves.
The sound travels through the wood and brick in a slow, dull hum. Then another. Then voices. Very faint. Not words. A presence. Morning preparations, perhaps. Or a change of shift. The city is back to work again. The thought is colder than the underground. Dawn is coming, and dawn is not salvation. Dawn is a deadline. The older man said the same thing. If you finish by dawn, you're done. If not, then they adapt. Men like that don't rely on just one method. The room below was one tool. If it didn't work, another hand would take over. And that means you have to go further than the basement system expected. Far enough to make it difficult to clean up. Far enough to get out where another type of witness might exist. The memory returns. Not of Fenlo this time, but of the younger voice above the boards. Waste. Not with molasses at that price. Even during the assassination attempt, they spoke like warehouse workers, like people assessing losses. That matters too. The whole system is woven from the language of commerce. Waste, damage, spoilage, supplies, mourning. A body becomes a commodity item if the men who talk over it are experienced enough. This is not a gang of theatrical villains. This is commerce without coats. The passage turns a little to the left. The air is getting stronger. You follow him. Then you stop so suddenly that your chest hits the mud. Ahead is a faint, dim bustle. Not quite light. Less darkness. A square hint in the blackness. A crack, a grate, a hole under the slats. You stare until your eyes hurt. Yes, there is a difference. The darkness ahead is broken. Not by a lamp. By a thinner shadow. You feel like rushing in. You don't. That would be foolish. Every time you rush, the passage punishes your body. Instead, you crawl another arm's length away. Then another. The hole becomes clearer. A wooden grate, set low in the brickwork, perhaps half clogged, with 2 broken slats. Air passes through it. Cold. Polluted by the river. And beyond it, space. Not necessarily outer space, an even bigger void. A utility pipe, a drain in the yard, a forgotten coal bridge? Not yet known, but bigger than this. Big enough to matter. Relief tries to rise inside you again. You hold back. Relief is often just fear changing masks for the next blow. You've learned that too. Then, from behind, a sound. Not close, but real. A muffled human blow from the side of the basement walkway. The board moved, the box moved. Then a voice, weak and angry through the layers of brick in the passage. You can't hear the words. You don't need to. They've found the hole. They know. The system above and below have merged. The hunt has changed. Your body moves before your mind can finish the thought. You crawl harder now, faster. Painful. There's no elegance left. There's no measured precision of a clerk. Only direction. Ahead is a broken grate. A voice behind means time has collapsed. Your hand reaches for the brick around the hole. Wet, cold, fragile. You examine one broken slat. Relaxed. Okay. You pull. She resists. Then gives way with a soft crack of rotten wood. The gap widens. Enough for your hand. Maybe your head. Maybe more. Behind you, another noise. Closer this time. Not yet underground. On a long journey. Maybe a lantern. A tool against a brick. The men decide whether to follow them or bypass them. Either way, they are no longer waiting for dawn to do the job. The room has failed. Now the men must fix what the room failed to complete. And that, most of all, brings you back to the beginning, to the hook, a sound in the dark, movement beneath the floor. Something was coming before you knew what it was. Now the circle was closing in. Because the real horror wasn't just the rats. It was the system that used them to hold you back long enough for the people above to decide what your fate would be. The basement wasn't the whole story. This was the waiting room.
This The passage, the grate, the voices behind. This was a real machine that was revealing itself. You pulled the second bar. It cracked. Debris. It gave out. The cold air hit you harder in the face. Behind what lays there was either salvation or another form of starvation in the same city. You didn't have a choice. Which? Only whether to go. And behind you, the pursuit had already begun. Sound under the boards. Another plank breaks in your hand. Not cleanly. With a wet crack that seems too loud in the passage. Cold air pushes through the widened crack. Stronger now. With it comes a smell different from the smell of the underground. Coal smoke. Wet river water. Rotten rope. And something metallic from the docks above. Outside air. Not the open street, perhaps, but air that has touched the larger world. You press your face against the opening. Beyond it lies a narrow service void beneath some wooden platform or warehouse passage, not high enough to stand on, but higher than this underground. A place where a man could crouch, a place where a man could move faster, the place where the lantern, if he had entered, would finally show him what he was looking for. Behind you, the sound comes again. Closer. Wood hits brick. Then an object is dragged. Then a voice. This time one word comes to you. Here. An older voice. Sure. No more waiting. No more certainty in the basement. No more patience for dawn. You've changed the arithmetic. And now the venerable machine of the city has done what all such machines do when routine doesn't work. It's getting personal. You tear up the broken tree again. Another strip snaps. Enough. Barely enough. You move your hand. Then your shoulder. Pain pierces the torn line of your coat. Your ribs scrape against the brick. Your neck catches, the sticky fabric tugging at the rough edges. For one ugly second, you think you're stuck again. And that thought sends you back to where you've been. Back. Back to the floor. Back to the sweet darkness. Going back to that first scrape at your shoulder, when you didn't yet know what was moving toward you. The hook returns here, not as a memory, as an understanding. At first, you heard something small and felt something close, and you believed the horror was in the thing itself. Claws, whiskers, a hidden movement. But now you know better. The sound under the boards wasn't the horror itself. It was an agreement. This was time bought. This was a city that kept you scared and still while the people above decided whether to consider you a loss, a damage, a pest, or nothing at all. The rats were never the cause of violence. They were a delay, a mitigation, a deprivation of choice. The basement was not designed just to hurt. It was designed to prepare you, not to resist what came next. The thought hardens you. Not with courage, with clarity. You lunge forward, hard. The brick catches, then lets go. Your body falls through the grate into the greater void beyond. You land awkwardly on one shoulder, biting your lip in pain and rolling onto the dirty boards and wet dust. But you've made it. You've made it. For one breath, just one, it feels like liberation. Then you hear the older man behind you, very close now, hitting the bricks of the underground with some kind of iron tool. And you understand. Again. Not liberation. Transition. The new space is low, black, and paneled with old wood. But compared to the underground, it seems vast. You can get down on one knee, then both hands. The floor here is not stone, but planks over supports, with gaps between them that show nothing below but deeper blackness. Somewhere above and behind, a thin strip of early gray light seeps between the warped planks. Not the actual sunrise, a hint of it. The city is beginning to pale. Dawn is approaching. And now the deadline is in sight. You crawl quickly down the service driveway. Not quietly, not elegantly. The planks creak under your weight. Dust rises. Your breathing is ragged. Every movement hurts. Behind you, the men are still working on the opening. The older one gives orders too quietly to be fully heard. The younger one responds from a distance, perhaps moving to get around. The opportunity is as striking as ice. They know this place better than you do. Better than...
If this entrance connects to the warehouse structure, there are ladders, traps, maintenance hatches, routes they can take that you can't see yet. You're not outrunning people. You're outrunning the familiar. It's much more complicated. You reach the end of the maintenance void and see it branching out. Left, a lower continuation, wetter, closer to the smell of the river. Right, a rough climb under closely spaced beams and stronger traces of coal and human use. You stop, just for a second. Think. The left path might lead outside, to a drain or some coastal culvert. The right path might lead to a warehouse where people might be closer, but so might men hunting you. The choice would be impossible, if not for one thing. Fenlo. If you crawl blindly to the river and emerge half dead in the mud, you might live an hour longer and still be dragged back or dismissed, like a mad traveler from the dock. But if you get through the mechanisms above, if you see enough, hear enough, confirm enough, then it becomes more than an escape. It becomes an accusation. And an accusation needs form. You need names. You need evidence. The right path can kill you. The left path can erase you. You turn right. Tonight you are a man who chooses not just to survive, but to remember. That may be the most dangerous instinct in a city like this. London tolerates pain better than a witness. The climb is awkward. You reach up, your fingers feeling for nails, splinters, warped beams, polished smooth by years of hidden use. Hidden use. The phrase comes back again and again. Everywhere in this night, there are places not meant for daytime understanding, but perfect for quiet work. The basement below, the underground, this subterranean passage, the whole architecture of concealment beneath the architecture of commerce. The world above counts the goods. The world below protects the counting. A sudden dull thud overhead, you freeze. Then you hear footsteps. Human. Now over the boards, not behind you. The light of a lantern seeps through the crack for half a second. Someone flies overhead. Not looking at random. Moving with purpose. They circle. The younger one, I guess. Trying to catch you where the foot rises into the warehouse. You sink flat and hold your breath. The boots stop. Right above you. No movement. No scrape. Just wait. You listen. You can still taste the molasses on your upper lip, mixed now with the dust and blood from where you bit your cheek. You don't move. The silence stretches. Then the boots move on. Fast. In the opposite direction. He thinks you've moved on. Good. Or maybe bad. Maybe he's running to cut you. You can't know. That's the worst part about being hunted by men, not darkness. Darkness moves by appetite, men move by intention. They can imagine. You move on, slower now. Then you stop again as your hand finds something unexpected. Paper. You pat the space carefully. The fallen paper tied with a rope, damp at the edge but mostly dry because it lay between the beams and the wall. Not random trash. Laid down. Hidden. Your pulse stutters. You bring it closer to the dim streak that seeps through the gap between the boards. There are numbers on the top sheet, columns, counting marks, and a name. Fenlo and March. There it is, Can't remember anymore. Ink? Real? Maybe a trading company? Warehouse brokers? Import clerks? Forwarders? Whatever the specific business? The name is enough to turn suspicion into structure. You don't need all the numbers. Just enough to know that the man in the fog belongs to the firm, not just himself. That means the system is even wider. No corrupt clerk, channel, anxiety, a business organization with its hands above and below the floor. Behind you, an older man curses, barely audible. He's either gone into a service passage or found a broken grate. Time is running out. You can't carry a full package if it slows you down. You tear off the top folded sheet and tuck it under your coat, where the molasses-stiff fabric can help it stick to your chest. You leave the rest, with regret, but not pointless. A living witness with one page is worth more than a dead fool clutching a pack. The planks ahead open slightly into a larger cavity, a maintenance room, perhaps, where a man could squat down completely. You enter, and for the first time, lift your head from the basement. Above you is the bottom of the hatch. Wood, an iron ring. Light seeps around the edges. Morning gray. Voices nearby. Not the older and younger men. Others, workers, real ones. Maybe two of them, arguing about loading or a delay or a mismatch in the count. Ordinary dockside irritation, ordinary life, a contrast so close it almost breaks you. Ordinary people a few feet above your skull while you kneel below them, covered in molasses and dirt, like something dug from the throat of the city. You put your hand on the hatch ring. Then you stop. If you burst in on them now, what will happen? Will they help? Will they back down? Will they call the foreman, who might be in the Fenlo chain? Will your hunters hear right away and claim you're a thief, a madman, a drunken trespasser from the river? Truth rarely wins in docklands, coming dirty and unannounced. Truth also takes time. Then you hear it. An older man is running behind you, not close enough to touch, close enough that you can barely hear his breathing as he stops. He knows you're nearby. Maybe he heard the package being moved. Maybe he knows the camera exists. Maybe he knows all the hidden bones of this place because he helped build his second life. His voice is low in the darkness. You have nowhere clean to go. That sentence is more of a threat to you than a threat. Not because it promises death, because it understands the city. There is no clean place. There is no place where your version of events ends up regardless of class, appearance, neighborhood, smell. A man in molasses who ends up in the dockyard underground will not be believed until he is convicted. That is the whole point. Not just hidden rooms, credibility, seriousness, language. You don't answer. He continues. Closer now. Get out of there, and it will be over soon. Maybe a lie. Maybe not. Men who prefer routine sometimes choose speed when routine doesn't work. Still, the offer teaches you something. He's nervous. If he was sure he'd catch you, he wouldn't haggle. That means the hatch upstairs matters. The regular workers upstairs matter, noise matters, visibility matters. The system hates witnesses. Okay, then you need to go to the witnesses. Hook return. The opening scene is now complete. You understand why the room started with sound, not sight. Because sound creates uncertainty. Uncertainty slows down resistance. A man who can't recognize a threat imagines 10 worse ones and becomes petrified under their weight. This is what the basement wanted. This is what the men above were counting on. The scraping under the boards, the light, whisker-like touch, the sweet coating on the skin. None of it was accidental cruelty. It was a mechanism that held you in place between fear and distrust until your will narrowed to one thing: to endure. And a man limited to endurance is easy to control. The return of that knowledge now does the opposite. It expands you. You see the whole machine, the basement, the underground, the sharpened, the hidden papers, the venerable trademark, voices above, the hunter below. The city finally shows its face, not the face of a monster, a businesslike expression. Your hand tightens on the iron ring of the hatch. You hear the older man moving again. One cautious step, then another. Take your time. He thinks he has you trapped between his approach and the uncertainty above. He may be right, unless the uncertainty can be turned against him, unless the hatch opens not into silence, but into spectacle, to witnesses before he can form a story, to ordinary people whose irritation can turn to alarm if the right image appears at the right moment. You look at your hands, sticky, dark, trembling. You smell evidence of something unclean. Okay. Let them see. Let them smell. Let the hidden world suddenly rise to the ordinary. This is the only chance left. Last chance, the older man says. You hear the tool in his hand move against the wood. He's almost at the camera. You tug on the ring. Once. Hard. The hatch resists. The wood swells. You tug again. Harder. He jerks half an inch with a crack. The voices above stop mid-sentence. The crunch of a boot. The man says, "What for God's sake?" The older man lunges forward into the darkness, and the chapter ends there, at the very edge where the mystery is broken.
What morning refuses to hide. The hatch opens onto the third train. Not quite. Enough. Enough for the gray light to split the camera. Enough for the ordinary world to notice something impossible rising from beneath it. The board jerks upward. A wedge of cold dawn spills over your hands. You hear the boots above you slide back heavily. One man curses. Another knocks over something wooden. A scoreboard, perhaps. Or a drawer lid. And at that very moment, an older man leaps out of the darkness behind you, not with the patience of a basement, not with the calm of a man who believes in method, with urgency. That tells you everything. Secrecy is broken. And once the secrecy is broken, all elegant systems become clumsy. You're going up, not gracefully, with everything you have left. Your shoulder hits the hatch, then your head, then your arms. The tree snaps so that your body is half lifted into the pale morning of the warehouse floor. The men look down. 2 workers. One has rope burns on both palms. The other holds a chalk marker. Neither of them looks like a conspirator. Both look like men whose day has just been interrupted by the underworld itself. Good. This is exactly what you need. The older man grabs your coat from underneath. The torn, tough molasses fabric hugs your chest. You almost fall back into the cell. One of the workers screams. No words at first, just shock. Then, Jesus Christ. The other drops to one knee without thinking and grabs your wrist. Not to save you heroically, because instinct is quicker than judgment when something human falls through a hole. That's useful too. Ordinary instinct. Ordinary witness. Ordinary people become part of the scene before the lie can emerge. The older man below is now swearing openly. The voice is unmistakable. The same one that comes from under the floor. The same one that trusted dawn to finish the story. He jerks once hard. The worker above reflexively steps back. And suddenly the hidden agreement becomes visible in physical form. One man below tries to pull you down. One man above pulls you up. Nothing
reveals the truth more quickly than opposing hands on the same body. You hear someone else approaching quickly across the warehouse floor. The click of boots, measurable, then accelerating. Maybe the foreman, or worse. You don't wait to find out. You kick down with your free foot. Your boot hits something, an arm, a shoulder, a tool. You don't know. The grip from below loosens. The worker above pulls hard. The other grabs you by the collar from behind, and you fall completely to the floor of the warehouse. For a moment, you can do nothing but lie there, on the wide, dusty planks, under the real morning, breathing in air that has come through human space, not through holes in the walls. The light of the sky is thin and dirty through the upper windows, but to you, it seems almost holy. You smell hemp rope, soot, wet wood, tar, men. There is no sweetness now, not a deadly smell, only work, only London waking up. Then the older man climbs through the hatch behind you. Not quite at first. One hand on the ring, one shoulder raised, his face still half-shadowed from below. And there he is at last. Not a monster, never like this. The face of a dockmaster, perhaps. Weather-beaten, unshaven, eyes accustomed to measuring weight and weakness with a single glance. The kind of man who disappears into a crowd because he resembles work itself. That's why people like Fenlo need people like him. Respectable systems always lend rough hands. "Thief," he says immediately. Too fast, too alert. He points at you as if the word had been waiting on his tongue all morning. Came out from under the log. A lie cooked up in one breath. Effective, but not effective enough. Because one of the workers now has molasses on his hand. Because he grabbed you by the wrist. And he looks at her, then at you, then at the hatch, then at the foreman coming out from below. The order is wrong. And ordinary people notice the wrong order before they notice the more subtle truths. You force yourself to lean on one elbow. Your body protests from 10 places at once. Your shoulder screams. Your ribs burn. Your neck aches. Your shoe slides a little on the boards. Still, you speak. Just a few words. Because you understand something now, as clearly as anything in the night. Too much explanation sounds like madness. Too much detail gives stronger men room to laugh. The truth must come in clean and clear, like a hook on a bill, like a number in a ledger. So you say only, "He came from there too." Silence. Beautiful silence. Because the line is simple enough to live by. Both workers look at you, then at the older man, then back at the hatch. One of them, the one with the rope-burned hands, slowly stands up. Not on your side. Not yet. On the side of confusion. And confusion is the #1 enemy of systems that depend on impeccable authority. "What were you doing down there?" he asks the foreman. An awkward question. Perfect for that very reason. Illegal. Unpolished. Not managerial. Simply human. "What were you doing down there?" The foreman tries the obvious route. "Check the run. Heard movement." But he says it a breath too late. And the worker can already see the moisture on his sleeves, sand on his knees, an iron tool in his hand. The man who checks the run does not emerge from the sealed lower hatch at dawn with a crowbar and dirt on his cuffs. Not if he wants to look innocent. Then another figure appears, coat buttoned, hat on, despite the darkness of the room, gloves, Fenlo. Of course, not in the shade now, in the gray of the morning, and even here he is too clean, too finished, too deliberate in his expression. Worry, official worry, the face of a man who intends to step into the chaos and name it before anyone else can. Now you know the type. The city breeds them. "What is this?" he asks, as if he doesn't know, as if his very question wasn't part of the mechanism. One of the workers answers before the foreman can. A man climbed through the boards. Not thief, not trespasser. Just a fact. Okay, facts first. Then names. That's how you get around the ledgers. Fenlo looks at you, and in that half-second of recognition, the whole deal is complete. You see it in his eyes. Not the shock of being alive, the calculation. How much have you heard? How much have you seen? How many of these men are already on your side? How quickly can you form this story? The recognition is mutual. There's no fog between you, not a basement wall. Only the warehouse light and the witnesses. This is the part he never wanted. You reach under your coat. All eyes turn to you. The foreman steps forward. Too fast. Too impatient. The worker with the chalk notices. Another useful detail. You pull out the folded sheet, damp around the edges, but legible. You hold it up. Not dramatically. Simple, like proof. Fenlo's face changes. Just a little, but enough. Enough for anyone to look closely. And all eyes are now on you. Found below, you say. A few more words. Again, clean. Fenlo doesn't deny the paper right away. This is his mistake. The experienced liar knows the dangers of overreacting, so he chooses restraint. But restraint, under these circumstances, reads like fear. The worker closest to him scans the page, Fenlo's gloves, and the hatch. A chain forms in the minds of the average person. Not the whole truth. Enough. The foreman moves. Finally, abandoning language for speed, he throws himself at the paper. There it is. The final revelation that no one can refuse. Because innocent people don't rush a document in front of witnesses if the document is of no importance. One worker grabs his arm, instinct again, then indignation, then another worker grabs his side. A struggle begins on the warehouse floor. Not a big fight, a nasty scuffle on the dock, a slip of boots, someone swearing, a jarring of a crate. Fenlo steps back. Not forward to help. Back. That, too, is noticed. And in this widespread, ordinary chaos, the secret architecture of the night finally comes out. Not all of it. Not every line of the ledger. Not every hidden room. Not every missing man. But enough to disturb the perfect surface. A hatch under the floor. The foreman below, before dawn. A witness covered in molasses crawls through the boards. A paper tied to Fenlo and March. A too-clean clerk, standing where no clean clerk should be. This is how history often unfolds. Not with full coverage. With one ugly fracture. The planks ahead part slightly into a larger cavity. A maintenance room, perhaps, where a man could sit down completely. You enter, and for the first time, lift your head from the basement. Above you, the bottom of the hatch. A tree, an iron ring. Light seeps around the edges. A gray morning, voices nearby. Not the older and younger men, others, workers, real ones, maybe two of them arguing about loading, or a delay, or a discrepancy in the count. Ordinary wharf irritation. Ordinary life. The contrast is so close it almost tears you apart. Ordinary people a few feet above your skull, while you kneel below them, covered in molasses and dirt, like something dug from the throat of the city. You put your hand on the hatch ring, then you stop. If you rush into them now, what will happen? Will they help? Will they retreat? Will they call the foreman, who might be from the Fenlo chain? Will your hunters hear you right away and declare you a thief, a madman, a drunken trespasser from the river? Truth rarely wins on the docks, coming dirty and unexpected. Truth also takes time, and then you hear it. An older man is running after you, not close enough to touch, close enough that you can barely hear his breathing as he stops. He knows you're there. Maybe he heard the package being moved. Maybe he knows about the camera. Maybe he knows all the hidden bones of this place because he helped build his second life. His voice is low in the darkness. You have nowhere clean to go. The sentence is more threatening than just a threat. Not because it promises death, because it understands the city. There is no such thing as a clean place. There is no place where your version of events will end, regardless of class, appearance, neighborhood, or smell. A man in molasses, trapped underground in a shipyard, will not be believed until he is convicted. That is the whole point. Not just hidden rooms, credibility, seriousness, language. You don't answer. He continues, closer now. Get out of there, and it will be over soon. Maybe a lie. Maybe not. Men who prefer routine sometimes choose speed when routine doesn't work. Still, the offer teaches you something. He's nervous. If he was sure he'd catch you, he wouldn't haggle. That means the hatch upstairs matters. The regular workers upstairs matter. Noise matters. Visibility matters. The system hates witnesses. Okay. Then you need to go to witnesses. Hook return. The opening scene is now complete. You understand why the room started with sound, not sight. Because sound creates uncertainty. Uncertainty slows down resistance. A man who can't recognize a threat imagines 10 worse ones and becomes petrified under their weight. That's what the basement wanted. This is what the men above had been counting on. The scraping under the boards, the light, whisker-like touch, the sweet coating on the skin. None of it was accidental cruelty. It was a mechanism that held you in place between fear and distrust, until your will narrowed to one thing: to endure. And a man with limited endurance is easy to control. The return of that knowledge now does the opposite. It expands you. You see the whole machine, the basement, the underground, sharpened, hidden papers, the venerable trademark, voices from above, the hunter below. The city finally shows its face, not the face of a monster, a business-like expression. Your hand tightens on the iron ring of the hatch. You hear the older man moving again. One cautious step, then another. Take your time. He thinks he has you trapped between his approach and the uncertainty above. Maybe he's right, unless the uncertainty can be turned against him, unless the hatch opens, not into silence, but into spectacle, to the witnesses before he can piece together a story, to the ordinary people whose irritation could turn to anxiety if the right image appears at the right moment. You look at your hands, sticky, dark, trembling. You feel traces of something unclean. Okay. Let them see. Let them smell. Let the hidden world suddenly rise to the mundane. This is the only chance left. Last chance, the older man says. You hear the tool in his hand moving across the wood. He's almost at the camera. You tug on the ring. Once. Hard. The hatch resists. The wood swells. You tug again. Harder. He jerks half an inch with a crack. The voices above stop mid-sentence. The crunch of a boot. The man says, "Well, for God's sake." The older man lunges forward into the darkness. And the chapter ends there, at the very edge where the secret is revealed. Full disclosure. Now the design is before you. Fenlow's firm handled the supplies and recorded the losses. Spoiled molasses could be written off. Spoiled merchandise became tools. The basements beneath the warehouses became holding areas.
Men like the foreman manage the lower rooms, the transportation, the rough handling, the silence. If a witness, a debtor, a messenger, or an inconvenient observer needed to disappear, the city's pest problem could ease the work and cover up the cause. By dawn, the body, if it was found at all, could be inscribed in the familiar language of the neighborhood. Bad conditions, pests, accident, beer, bad luck. Not murder. Never pure murder. Only the Riverside Quarter did what everyone already half believed. That was its genius. The scheme was hidden within the existing suffering. It exploited what the city had normalized. And since Victorian London was already full of damp cellars, rats, spoiled cattle, and unseen men, the crime hid itself as a backdrop. This is always the most dangerous costume. Finally, the foreman is forced to the floor. Not neatly. 3 men now. 2 workers and a watchman who has arrived late and is confused but not blind. Someone takes the iron tool from his hand. Someone else opens the hatch wider and sees the darkness below. Sees enough to recoil. The questions begin immediately. Good questions. Good questions. Questions about the docks. Who used this passage? Why is there treacle on it? What are these documents? Who gave the order to open the lower access? Fenlo tries to speak. He is not in control now. That is the difference. For the first time in a long time, he is not the man who calls the scene, he is in it. And the scenes, once separated, become difficult to experience. You are helped to sit up, leaning against a box. Someone brings you water. You drink a little. Your hands are shaking too much. The paper remains in your hands. You do not let go of it. Not to fear, not to exhaustion.
Not to some smiling boss who claims that he only needs to examine it for relevance. No, you know enough about systems now. A thing survives only when it is held by a person whose life depends on it. The morning is growing stronger through the windows. Not beautiful. London mornings are rarely like that, but honest in their own way. Gray reveals form better than darkness. And in this gray light, the warehouse looks less like a place of commerce than what it has always partly been. A shell built on decisions. Some are decent. Some are ugly. Some are so profitable that people have stopped asking what lies beneath them. Fenlo is not arrested dramatically. There is no trumpet of justice. There is no perfect ending. Only delay, witnesses, suspicion, a messenger sent for by the constable, a warder brought in from another yard. The names are finally written down in another kind of ledger. This, at any rate, is more in keeping with the story. Systems don't collapse with a single speech. They weaken when enough people are forced to look where they agreed not to look. Maybe that's all you did. A forced look. Sometimes that's enough for one night. And as you sit there, shivering under a borrowed cloth, while the hatch gapes like a wound in a warehouse floor, you understand the last thing. The city didn't invent men. Men didn't invent rats. Rats didn't invent the basement. But the city let them all join in? That's the real horror. No monster. Collaboration. Between neglect, profit, class, architecture, and appetite. That's how history becomes unbearable. And that's how it becomes real. Tonight, or rather this morning, you are no longer a bait in the dark. You are the man who climbed through the boards, the man who made the underworld shine with warehouse light, the man who turned the scrapings and the molasses and the half-hidden ledgers into a story that others will now have to answer for. Maybe not completely, maybe not forever,
but enough so that the lie never feels as flawless again as it did yesterday. Enough so that some clerk, some constable, some laborer, some magistrate, when he hears the word parasite, can now think not only of rats, but of people. And that is where the story ends. Not in triumph, in exposure, in a pale morning. The moment when history stops whispering under the floor and is dragged, dirty and trembling, out into the open. This is not a horror story. This is history.